What's up, guys? It's Ruben. I am the young adults leader here at Harvest Church, and pretty much right now we are going through the Bible in 1 year on the Bible app through Bible Project. They're pretty much a huge YouTube channel that uh, demonstrates the Bible's ideas, the knowledge, the wisdom through color, characters, videos, and pretty much explaining it through drawings and cartoons. And, and honestly, they have such amazing content. I highly recommend everything that they've been able to put out. That obviously it's biblically accurate and principled, but I think most, if not all of it, is like pretty solid. So, I mean, right now we're actually on the first day of the Bible in 1 year. We're going through Genesis chapter 1 through 3. And I'm just going to give a little brief overview of everything that right now it's talking about, especially from the video that is in the devotional part of the app. And so it's speaking on chapters 1 through 11. It's a 7-minute video. And so basically in chapters 1 through 3, we read that God created all of creation out of disorder and darkness, right? And he created order and beauty and goodness for it to be all throughout the world. And then from that, obviously, from each of the days, we know that each of the days, I have my notes here. It says day one was the light and darkness, which is what separates, the day from the night. Day two is the water and the sky. So he kind of like just pretty much split it into two different parts. That's where we get the word firmament comes from in the King James Version. So there's that, like pretty much like what people call the dome when it comes to the earth. And so we have the sea and land for day three. And this is actually the first time God says that something is good in his creation. Day four, he created the sun, the moon, and the stars, which is also another time where God says something is good. So I was like, all right, bet. And I just kept reading. And day five, he speaks on the birds and the fish and how he's telling them to be fruitful and to also multiply, just like in day six, he tells the humans to do so as well. And so the way I got that from there, I'm just going to give little pieces of nuggets and knowledge that I was kind of getting as I was reading, is that anything that has life must produce life. So when it comes to like animals or humans or anything that has life in it, it must produce, it must give of itself and to create more things like it or that are similar to it. So that's part of the reason why God gave us the role. As you see, we continue through reading in Genesis 1, God gave humans the role to, cultivate the earth, to multiply, to subdue it, to rule over it. That's the main gist of what we're supposed to do here on the earth. So however that may be, when it comes to conquering and ruling the earth, obviously that means we're on the top of the food chain in the Bible. And also it's literally in science. Like that's why humans are there, because we have the capability to think, to reason, to create weapons, to create tools, to build and conquer and take over things. That's who we are in our nature, because that's the way God made us. He made us to be like him in that way. Not to say that, because people are like, well, if God isn't, if we're made in his image and likeness, why doesn't God have a body? It's like, well, God, he created us in his image in the personal aspect of it, right? And so when he made us to be like him in the creativity and all of these different things. And eventually, as we get down all the way to the New Testament, we see that God eventually envelops himself in human creation in an incarnation of Jesus Christ. But that's something that now we know why God is invisible. It's not that we need an image. We are the image. Like every single human being, we all look like God in our own way, but through our creativity and what we do to subdue the earth. So that could be dancing, that could be writing, that could be building a company, a business, and that could be helping out in the community through, volunteer efforts or anything that is there as a way to subdue the earth and take it over and to cultivate it and make everything better than what we've been given, you know? And so through all of that, right, we read that in Genesis, he made us in his image, and we're there to rule, to have purpose, to be the representatives of God, to reflect him, and to really harness the creation potential that we have, that we've been given to be like God, and use that to transform the earth into something like heaven. That's part of why Jesus said, let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So he wants God, or rather us, he wants us to make heaven or earth like heaven. And that's the whole purpose. And then eventually we get to Genesis 2, which is kind of like a magnifying glass of Genesis 1, when he's speaking on the sixth day of humanity, where he's creating the humans and the animals, how they're being brought up from the dust of the earth and the ashes, right? And so this is where I read, it also said, for some reason, there was something that kind of intrigued me that I read here. It said in 2:5-6 that he didn't add any wild plants or grains, and that he didn't let rain fall on the earth because humans had not been created yet to cultivate it. And I'm like, And that made me think that whenever God does something, he never does anything that doesn't have purpose. That's part of what the word good means too in the Hebrew, is that good means purposeful. So when he says in the end, in day 6, that, all of creation is very good, he's saying that it is very purposeful. There's something that comes out of it. There's a reason for why it's there. So I believe God doesn't do anything outside of purpose, out of there not being need. So when we go through things in our lives, when God allows certain things in our lives, it's never not for no reason. There's always a purpose behind it. So God is very intentional. And so since he knew that people weren't created, he just kind of left that to be until they were born into the earth. And that's why for us, it's unnatural for us to see something like death. It's weird. It just feels wrong, because in creation, we weren't meant to see death. We weren't meant to look at it. It was just meant to be life and life-giving. So when we see a dead body in a casket, when we see an animal that just got killed on the road, when we see plants dying, it creates this sadness in us, because it's not the way God meant the world to be, but it is the way we created it through the sin that we caused by Adam and Eve's sin, when they ate the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And so, God tells them, eat the fruit and you will die. It's pretty much, death happens when we don't want or go to God anymore, because he's the giver of life. And so when we eat the fruit and die, they didn't physically die as soon as they ate it. Eventually they did. But the idea was that they died spiritually. They died to that intimacy with God. They died to the thing that, causes them to want to go to God. So what sin does, sin is not the death itself. As we know in Romans, it says that sin produces death. So it creates it creates death and lets things happen. And it causes us to stay in a stagnant place, because what happens when you die? You become stiff. You become still. Look at the water that's still. When you look at a pond or a lake, it becomes dead. It becomes green, and it has the, algae, all of these things. All of that comes into play. And that's why a river is clear, and it's, it's living, it's moving, it's vibrant. And so with that being said, I'm just reading through all of this, and I want to just kind of give one last point. Where Adam was put to sleep by God. And I feel like this was just like a big revelation that I read from it. And I'm going to give that and then give a little bit of overview, but it's really this, that God caused man to sleep. And so when he caused Adam to sleep, because he wanted to create someone that would be fit for him, for some reason, because I always was taught how there's a parallel between the first Adam and the second Adam, that is Jesus Christ. And so when I read this, I was like, okay, Adam was put to sleep. Jesus died on the cross, right? Put to sleep. He's dead. Out of Adam's rib, he got pulled out of his side, you know, and he got a rib. God used that rib to create the woman, and he sealed up Adam's side. What happened with Jesus? Jesus was stabbed in his side, and what came out was blood. And that blood is what helps cleanse us from our sin, which is what created us, the church, the bride of Christ. So I read that, and I was like, wait, Eve is the imagery of the church, the future church, through what God did to Adam when he pulled out the rib. It's the same imagery. It's when you get when Jesus got stabbed in the side, that blood and water that came out, that became the life that we now live in Christ. Because it is what created us to be who we are, the righteousness of God, the holy generation, the holy people. And that's just something I just found so profound, is that God has been working the salvation story since the beginning of the world. And it's like, even before man sinned, God set it up, you know? And so all of this being said, like, I just want to get like that brief overview of everything, is that when it came down to it, God created all the earth. God created it and filled it because there was purpose in it. When there's darkness, when there's death, when there's void and nothingness, and there's no life, there's no purpose. And so when we go out and do things, when we go out and live, when we go out to eat and enjoy our lives, when we work with our hands and put the best effort forward, that is when we are fully living in our purpose. That's how God wants us to live. And so when it comes down to it, sin that entered the world through the deception of the serpent, as we know later on, the devil, or in Revelation says the old serpent, the one they call the dragon. Notice how we just went from serpent to dragon. It's crazy. And we were deceived by that, and that's the unfortunate thing. But through that, God was still able to figure out a way to save humanity from the grip of sin. And so that's all I really got to share with you guys today. I definitely can't wait to read more with you. But literally, it's chapter 1, creation. Chapter 2 is a magnification of creation. And then from chapter 2, we just read about how Adam worked and tilled the ground, had a wife eventually, and then sin came into the world, unfortunately, through deception and through humans wanting to do their own thing. But eventually, we're going to see as how God tries to work this out through the next chapters of Genesis. So all I have to say for you guys is I pray that this blessed you. If you ever get a chance to come to Harvest Church, hit me up. And we could definitely come back together in fellowship to really learn what the Bible has to say, and also learn how we can love each other as disciples of Christ. God bless you, and have a wonderful day.